Rivals of Aether does not have shields. Rivals of Aether does not have ledges. In Rivals of Aether, you don't even have a down button. Rivals of Aether 2 is a pretty good game. Hi, my name is Dan Fernacey, and I want to talk to you about my game, Rivals of Aether 2, that I invented. Rivals of Aether just came out, and a lot is different from Rivals of Aether 1. I played Rivals of Aether 1 more or less when it came out. And obviously, I mean, before it came out, when I was coding it, because I created it, because I'm Dan Fernacey. And, you know, I played it for a very long time. And if you are not familiar, those silly things I just said in the very beginning, yes, Rivals of Aether 1 didn't have shields. They had just parry, which did make it over to Rivals 2. There are no ledges. You had a whole bunch of wall jumping. A lot of shenanigans going on with the recovery. And it goes a lot deeper than that, too. There are no grabs in Rivals of Aether 1. Sort of, except when there are. And so a lot of players really like all of the changes. Okay, a lot of players do actually like all the changes, but a lot don't. A lot of Rivals 1 veterans, understandably, have reacted perfectly, calmly, and normally, and have treated me, Dan Fernacey, the creator of the game, with the utmost respect. Okay, so what do I think? Someone who's actually played Rivals of Aether for a very long time, right? I basically started, like, obviously I've played Smash as a kid, but like the Rivals of Aether 1 was my first like real hardcore competitive, take it super seriously, too seriously, like a detriment to my life, seriously game. So what do I think of Rivals 2? Do I think it's better? Do I like it? Is this a game that's only for melee players, PM players now? Or is it still for me, Dan Fernacey? What do I think of Rivals of Aether 2's changes? Well, before I get to that, because I know how this YouTube game is played, I want to give it a little background. So yeah, a lot is different with the game. You can hold the down button. People don't like that. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of new defensive options. The way you get back on the stage has been completely changed, and everybody just feels different, right? All the data's changed. It's a new engine. So like, you know, almost everything about the game is different. And was that for the better? Or was something lost in translation? Did Rivals lose that creative spark? Or is it the new game? Is it the game that will succeed where so many other platform fighters have failed, right? Nazby, Rushdown, Revolt, Brawl Out, Multiverses. Will Rivals 2 succeed where those failed? I hope so. It's my game. I'm Dan Fernacey. I created it. And so let me talk about my experience with Rivals 2. I did play it a long time ago, way before any of the Kickstarter betas. I even dabbled with the game in a few developer tournaments that were like just in the Rivals dev Discord, and I was terrible at it. There's a couple of things that kind of went against me right off the bat. Is I have what's called a metacarpal boss, and so when I use a regular controller for extended periods of time, it hurts my wrist like a lot. I think I've mentioned this in a previous video. I actually, at the time of that previous video, I thought it was my fault. I thought I treated my hand badly with editing. Nope. There's a thing in my wrist, and they don't recommend surgery. I just am unlucky. So I use a box type controller nowadays, but in the very, very early builds of Rivals, those controllers didn't work. They didn't have that support yet. Obviously right now, works great. But at that time, so like, it's already a whole different ball game to me. I'm using a controller, which I'm not even used to at that point, playing in a brand new game against people who made the game. And so I was really bad, but I was like, this is cool. Game seems like it's gonna be cool. Like, I'm stressed. I'm gonna stress how early these builds were. Like, VFX not finished, a whole bunch of different mechanics not finished. At the time too, like shield dropping didn't even work the way it did now. Whole bunch of little things. I did poorly, whatever, moving on. Time passes, the Kickstarter comes out. I back it, because it's my game, I'm Dan Fernacey. And so I am in those Kickstarter betas. First beta rolls around. I think it does finally support a box controller at this point. Controls are still a bit janky for those very early betas. So yeah, I boot up the game again, and I hate it. The game just feels very different, and I have obviously a lot of muscle memory when it comes to the first game, and like Rivals 2 is in a weird spot where it's like it's so similar and yet so different that it is a very frustrating experience. Yeah, I really didn't enjoy it, and At that point, though, I'm like, there's something wrong with me. You know, it's my fault. I've got controller issues or whatever. I also, you know, haven't been in it that much. I haven't been playing Rivals 1 nearly that much. I did go and play a bunch of Melee also. I do want to clarify, I'm not just a Rivals boy. Once Slippy came out, I went hardcore on that, right? If you've watched my previous videos, you know I love Yoshi, which really doesn't help because that character is also really weird. It's not like a normal character and doesn't really just translate into another character. So in my mind, I've got all these different things going against me. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, the game sucks. Not really. I'm mad. I'm bad. I'll get over it. At this time, too, other people that also back the Kickstarter, they start saying stuff. I'm not online like nearly as much as I used to be. I'm not really in the Rivals community as much as I used to be. I hear bits and pieces. It's more like a friend was like, oh, did you see this thing on Twitter? And I'm like, what's Twitter? Do you mean X? I love crypto. No, I'm not on that platform anymore. My point is, I don't really fully know what the extent of the populace's opinions are. I'm just some guy. Dan Fernacey. And then I broke my hand. My other hand. Unrelated, just I broke it, got crushed at a van door. It's fine now. I have both hands. I'm good. So I like lost out on like one of the near the end last, like second to the last beta. So like I didn't even get to play that one. I actually did try to play. Like I literally had my hand in the cast. And, like, try to play. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And it hurt real bad. I was like, oh no, don't do that. Yeah, broke my hand. I hate the game. Everything's looking like shit. I don't make YouTube videos anymore. And then Steam Next Fest happens, right? So like the week before Rivals actually came out, it was basically out for free. There was like the demo that you could play, which is more or less the whole game. And something happened. It was like a switch turned on in my brain. And all of a sudden, it was like I was back at 2016, 2015 or whatever, when Rivals first came out. I don't know. I can't really explain it. I really like the game all of a sudden. I don't know what's going on. I'm just really enjoying the game. I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. I do really like Rivals 2. A lot. A lot of the things that initially bothered me, I started to get over, right? Like, yeah, everybody's complaining about like shields being too strong, crouch canceling, people just don't like ledges, you get too many options on that. And a lot of these things are still more or less issues with the game, and also the devs have like, you know, done patches and they've nerfed different things and they've tweaked the numbers here and there and all that stuff. And so I think the game is in a really good state right now, and it's just come out, right? Like it's just, if you want to think about Rivals 1 when it first came out, right? It's night and day. Rivals 2 is made by a group of very talented people that have kind of been in it and done it before now. This isn't their first rodeo like it was with Rivals 1, sort of. And so I think a lot of the changes have just improved the game. And so yeah, so those are my honest thoughts on Rivals 2. I really like it, and I think it's living up to the hype, 100%. I think Rivals 2 is going to succeed where all the other platform fighters have failed. One of the main reasons for that isn't really any of the things I've talked about before. The main thing that I think really sets Rivals apart is the visuals. It's got good graphics, which is obviously an oversimplification of what's really going on. Obviously, the texturing, the colors, fantastic. But where it really shines is the animations. Like, no offense, well, Nazby, Multiverses, Rushdown Revolt, all these other plat fighters, they all look like dog shit. I'm so sorry. But they do. It's hard. I mean, fighting game animations are complicated. It's not just a matter of the motion being sold. It's also got to, you know, be balanced. It has to adhere to the frame data and look good at the same time. And I think every other indie plat fighter has really more or less failed on this point. Dan has written, I'm Dan. He's written Medium articles about a lot of this stuff. I'm not really gonna go into the depth. You can go and check that shit out yourself, but he knows what he's doing. And then funny little story on that too, if you followed my previous videos, you know I made Dynok. I've made a workshop character, and at some point I actually ended up hiring an artist to replace all the art. But before that happened, once when I was working on Dynok myself, doing my own crappy, awful pixel art, Dan, he gave me some feedback on the animation for the fair, for whatever reason. I don't know why he did that. Looking back, I got a glimpse, I feel like, into like the world of what it's like being a dev for Dan Fernacey LLC. Like for a small period of time, I was an animator. Right? I was like making a version, sending it to Dan. Dan would give me notes. I'd like look at the notes, try to be like, here's this, send it back. I failed. He'd give me more notes of what I'm doing wrong, because again, I wasn't an animator. But it's cool that happened, because I feel like I got a glimpse of that. And like, obviously, Dan knows his shit. And Rivals 2, just looking at it speaks for itself. I think that is the key reason why Rivals 2, I think, is really... It's gonna be a good one, guys. Stick around with this game. You should play Rivals 2 if you haven't picked it up. So, why are people freaking out? Why are people complaining? Well, one, like I said, I'm not really truly online. I don't know. I don't care. They're stupid and children. But two, I think, going off of my own experiences when I first played the betas and I first like had my reaction to Rivals when I wasn't enjoying it, like some of the major differences are very shocking to someone that comes from Rivals. Even though myself, like, I did set out to, like, I want to play Melee, I played a bunch of PM, like, I wanted to get that perspective from the other Smashes, and so maybe that's why I'm less of, like, a holdout, and why I never really, like, had that sort of vitriol that some other Rivals 1 players have had initially. Something about Rivals 1, and this was, to me, a complaint of mine from Rivals 1, but I think it's also just part of the general feel of Rivals 1, is low percent game. Like, Rivals 1 from, like, 0 to, let's just say 50, 0 to 40, whatever. It depends on the matchup, depends on the character, depends on the move. There really isn't a low percent game with Rivals 1. Not like how there is with the other plat fighters. Rivals 1, because it didn't have shields and like really just weak defensive options and no grabs to like counter the shields and things like that, when you hit somebody, you've won neutral, like 100% of it. You've hit them, you get to combo now, congrats, it's Rivals 1. You don't really have to think about the game at those lower percents in the same way you do with other plat fighters. Rivals 2, on the other hand, it brought over that low percent dynamic that you got in the other plat fighters, especially Melee PM, the obvious main influences. In Rivals 1, it's very rare that moves are negative, or that you're like ever at like even or disadvantage on hit. Rivals 2, on the other hand, though, in that lower percent game, it's not the case with every move. A lot of moves, especially your bread and butter of Rivals 1, jabs, tilts, not super great when you hit someone at 0%. They'll hold down, they'll shield or something, like immediately after, and so you're not going to get a combo, you're not going to do what you get to do in Rivals 1, and I think that is like, initially feels bad to a lot of Rivals 1 players. It's just like, oh, this game sucks, I can't do anything, the defensive options are too strong, right? These are the complaints that I have like sort of heard. But that's a good thing. Is where my point is. As complicated as Rivals 1 was, that was a space where it was very much lacking in depth. And now with Rivals 2, you gotta really think about what you're doing at those low percents. You can't just jab into a tilt. And I think, that was Rivals 1 for so much of that low percent game. So now, you gotta grab. That's the sort of unfortunate part. If I have like a complaint on Rivals 2, is it sort of feels like it boils down to do like a weak aerial into a grab. Strong hits, are usually more committal, so you kind of don't want to just throw those out in neutral. Anyway, grab beats shields, it beats parries. There you go, that's your next thing. It beats holding down, it beats all those options. So but like I said, the more and more I play, the less that one bothers me, and the less I think that's true. That part, I think, basically just run directly counter to what people are used to in Rivals 1. And then on top of that too, there's also the whole ledge game. With Rivals 1, you have like this overly complicated but kind of awesome way to recover where you're just wall jumping and using your options. That sort of not in the game, at least it's nerfed, right? You can't use your up special to wall jump anymore. They took that out because if you could do that, the recovery would be too strong, and it's kind of already too strong. So like, what are you gonna do? You can't really do that. A lot of people don't like that because that is one of the more sort of unique dynamics of how Rivals 1 worked. And so it's like almost flipped, where most people, I think, when they first pick up Rivals 1, you're like, I don't know how to get back on stage. There's no ledge. What do I do? So it's like, how do you have it both ways? And Rivals 2 right now is trying to have it both ways. Like I said, the more and more I play it, the less and less I mind all these little things. I do have one thing to say, and I'm dropping the guys here. I'm Adam, Carra, and I'm going to speak to you, Dan Fernacey. That stage. Dan, Bubby. Alright, I'm with you so much. Like I said, I love your games, but that stage, everything everybody's been telling you about it, they're right. Let's bow out, let's move gracefully, let's admit we're wrong, let's move on from this stage. Hey, you still got it, Dan? Remember Treetop in Rivals 1? That was a cool stage, that's different, right? It's asymmetrical. Great stage! No problem. Rivals wasn't ever a lack of shields, a lack of ledges, lack of grabs, or whatever like that. Rivals is Rivals because of the character design, because of the mechanics of each character. There is just like this focus that is within each and every one of the Rivals characters that I think really sets it apart and above basically every other plat fighter out there, and really like fighting games sort of in general. Like I think it really does stand out. But Dan, obviously, he took a lot of inspiration from like League of Legends and things like that. I think he had like this other sort of perspective going into Rivals. He just made very bold choices. And that's what Rivals is. Not shields, not holding down, not ledges or whatever. These are all little things. These get tweaked. The core of what Rivals was is absolutely translated over into Rivals 2. So anyway, those are my honest thoughts on Rivals of Aether 2. It's a pretty good game, and I'm going to be playing it a lot. Will I make more videos at him, Carra?